East and the great people of Kasarani constituency, that we as your members of parliament, we will protect your interest, we will fight for you. This war is far from over. And number one, as members of parliament, it is our right, inherent and inalienable right, to protect you not only religiously but also spiritually. And because of that, we have found a new owner, the legitimate owner of the said Kirima land. And this parcel of land belonged to one Bernardo de Masi. And that's why we are here today, to ensure that Bernardo de Masi gets what is rightfully his. The Kirimas are people who fraudulently took this same parcel of land from the Dominicos family, who is being represented by one Bernardo de Masi. We want the court to determine who is the rightful owner of the said parcel of land. As that is taking place, we've also appealed the decision by the Environment and the Land Court that was recently out, and to ensure that this appeal even goes up to the Supreme Court. With that, we shall have sufficient time, and together with this case, which we pray that number one, the rightful owner be determined before residents negotiate, because as we speak, we don't know who the residents are going to negotiate with. We don't know if the residents are supposed to negotiate with the Kirimas family or the Dominicos de Masi's family. So after that determination, the residents will come on board for the negotiation to take place. Number two, because of this is not a case that is going to end today or tomorrow. It might take even 10 years. Its appeal might take another 10 years. The Court of Appeal, that is, and the Supreme Court might take another 10 years. That is 30 years. Together with the appeals that we filed, another 10. That is 50 years of negotiation. And a story is told of a king who had two servants. These two servants lied to the king that they could make the king's horse to fly. The king, having realized that they lied, the king jailed them and condemned them to death. A night before their execution, the king called them to hear their last word. Then one of them said that he had nothing to say. Therefore, he was ready to be executed the following day. While another one told the king that he needed another 6 more months to make the king's horse fly. So the king said that one to be executed, and the one who needed 6 more months was also given that time. So when they went back to the prison cell, the one who was to be executed the following day asked the other one that, why did you lie to the king again, that you can make his horse fly, yet you know that the horse cannot fly? And he said that within 6 months, a lot can happen. Number one, within 6 months, the king can die, and therefore he will not be executed. Number two, within 6 months, the horse can die, and therefore he will have no animal to fly, to fly. Number three, that himself, he can die of natural causes within the 6 months, and therefore he will not have to be terminated or rather sent to heaven via different way, that is through execution. And lastly, that indeed he can make the horse fly. So we have time, we have 50 years to make the horse fly. So definitely, whatever you do with that story, I can only wish our constituents, that is the Embakasi East and Kasarani constituencies, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Do not be troubled by the eviction notice. We are here to make an application for review of the judgment, that came out recently and to seek for stay orders to ensure that we serve you. So all in all, a lot can happen within 50 years. So we want to still buy 50 years, but the rightful owner of this land is one Domenico De Masi. Asanteni sana, the Kirimas. We will meet with you in 40 years time to 50 years time. Let's, Mheshimiwa has not finished something.
And then Babu, utatuongelesha Kiswahili. But I have a few questions.
So it's just one thing I wanted to say, and this is a plea to the Honorable Court. I want the court to understand the effect of those orders. And I want the judge to objectively look at the evidence presented today, so that in terms of the lives that are affected today, to make a fair determination in the interests of justice. Because the number of people are affected is a huge number of people. Almost 20,000 families. We have a lot of school-going children in that area. We have hospitals in those areas, and we even have schools. So we want the Honorable Court to look at this very objectively. In our country, Kenya, this is usually our last line of defense, even as we look at everything else. So we want the judge to look at it objectively. All we're asking for is time to make a fair determination. And if there's new evidence presented in court, it is upon the judge to look at that new evidence. And as he looks at it, he makes sure everybody affected, their lives are not interrupted due to that judgment that was delivered earlier this month. That is my plea. And I mentioned that it is very important, especially in a case where people are going to lose their homes and their properties. We establish first of all who the rightful owner of that land is. Because if you look at the history, because the evidence that we present, we have an old title coming from 1904, I believe. 1904. There is no evidence of that land being transferred to the Kirimas. This is the 99-year leasehold of that particular piece of land. And curiously, the Kirimas presented a title deed that where the lease starts in 2003, at which point the old title expires. There is no evidence of any transfer of that piece of land to the Kirimas, and that is why it's very important. Remember, there are many lives being affected by this particular case. It would be very sad for those particular people to negotiate with the Kirimas, and thereafter a new owner again coming to claim the same piece of land, and we start again from scratch. And that is why we are here today, so that we can ask the court, at the end of this process, or rather at the beginning of this process, to give us stay orders, so that we can establish who is the rightful owner of this piece of land before we proceed in the elections. And as has been rightly said, we are approaching the holy month of December. These people are not sleeping. These people have lived there for quite a number of years. And to them, being evicted after sending all this money to buy that property is something we cannot fathom. I am here to represent those people of Karauri. And if they are going to negotiate, they must negotiate with the rightful owner. And that can only be determined by the Honorable Court. There's also a statement that was made by the then Lands Minister long ago, Honorable Orengo, and he stated that all land that was leased after 1908, I have to get the correct year, should revert back to the government. So we have again a third player here. We have to determine whether also this is government land. Because if it's government land, then they have to be able to be the ones who take care of the people who live in that particular area. And then lastly, what I want to say, the people of Karauri, the people of Embakasi history and Babu represents, they need to feel protected by the same government that we pay taxes to. And as members of parliament, as their representatives, the only reason we are here is to ensure that they get a fair hearing. We have presented a case through the lawyers about the rightful owner, and what we want from the Honorable Court is to determine first who owns the land before we proceed to protect the interests of those owners. I want the court to understand the effect of those orders. And I want the judge to objectively look at the evidence presented today, so that in terms of the lives that are affected today, to make a fair determination in the interests of justice. Because the number of people are affected is a huge number of people. Almost 20,000 families. We have a lot of school-going children in that area. We have hospitals in those areas, and we even have schools. So we want the Honorable Court to look at this very objectively. In our country, Kenya, this is usually our last line of defense, even as we look at everything else. So we want the judge to look at it objectively. All we're asking for is time to make a fair determination. And if there's new evidence presented in court, it is upon the judge to look at that new evidence. And as he looks at it, he makes sure everybody affected, their lives are not interrupted due to that judgment that was delivered. And
according to what has been said, that the judgment of the court was the end of that journey. This marks the beginning of the journey. Why do we say so? The court has actually, through that judgment, awarded or allocated this parcel to people, according to our documents, can only be defined as special and specialist land grabbers. They created documents, they took it to court, and they have, through a court order, purported to own this particular land. We have documents that show that way before these documents were created by Mr. Kirima and his estate by extension, belonged to our client, way before. And this has been a trend happening in this country, where if you have someone who has been a Kenyan or who has who is from a different race, these particular people have created a mentality of creating documents and taking this away from them. Today is a day where we represent the estate of a deceased, a person who is crying upon being given documents by the government of this republic and upon entering agreements with innocent Kenyans to at least accord them a parcel of land at a very fair rate. That particular person is now being told that this parcel is not yours, and the person who was given subsequent documents through a fraudulent scheme, which we have elaborately indicated, is now purporting to want to evict these people. This case will lead to only one outcome. The person who will be evicted by a court order will be the Kirima estate, and because we have documents to demonstrate the same. As we have filed this particular matter, we have indicated that the Kirima estate knew very well about our client's ownership. It's not like they didn't know. They never informed court. So there is a principle in law that if you do not give full disclosure, you are guilty of a malfeasance. And even the orders that we have gotten can be set aside. So we have brought all this information. You are welcome to look at the documents we have brought, or we have original documents in our custody, given by none other than the government of Kenya. So to that extent, we will want this dispute heard before this court, so that the court can make a determination as between our client and Kirima's estate, who legitimately owns this particular property. And ideally after that, we will know who will be evicted. But before then, our prayers to the court today are to issue a stay, so that people are not evicted at the end of, the holy month of December, so that these innocent residents can await a determination by this particular court. That is our prayer today. It's a prayer we really hope that the court will find favor and allow us to hear this matter next year, while these particular people at least await and can still live within the confines of the habitats that they have. Evicting them is actually an affront against the constitutional right to own property in this country. And if you evict these particular people, when they have negotiated with our client who owns the property, then anyone can be evicted from this country. Maybe even our president from State House. We don't know who will come up with a title tomorrow. So we must protect the rights of innocent purchasers. One of the issues we have raised, and we invite you to look at the file that has been filed by that has led. You will not find a sale agreement. You will not find anything to demonstrate any funds have moved to our client. And the law of the land is very clear. You cannot have any sale of land without a sale agreement. So that alone will vitiate anything that they are saying. And that's the very reason we are bringing out this mystery. If indeed this sale happened, then the first witness for the Kirimas would have been our client. But our client was never notified. This thing was done at night. When our client is waking up in the morning, there's a judgment. That is what is before the court.
We have come here upon instructions of our clients, and in support of Babu and Karauri. Our client is the estate of Dominico, being represented by one Bernardo Dimasi. And the thing is that the estate of Dominico are the owners of LR number 1508/8, which is all that parcel of land in dispute. and we have this morning, rather this afternoon, we will be filing an application for review before the same judge, so that the same can be considered and first obtain a stay, so that we can obtain a reprieve to the residents of that the Wajimali represent, and so that they can be, at least be able to have Christmas, and again we can be able to have justice to that, and have the land to rightful.
Thank you, Advocate Wandaru. In addition to that, for you to get involved in the purchase of land, then you must have the completion documents. So we want to know the completion documents that are that the Kirimas are in possession of, from the ID copies of Dominica to the passport-sized photos, to proof of payment, to the original title deed, because an indenture, by then it was called an indenture, that because it has to be surrendered. So once we have that, then they can say that they bought this parcel of land. But otherwise, the Dominico's family was scared for their lives. They ran from Kenya back to Italy. We got them around near Lake Como in Italy. They were bringing them back here. So I'm very sure that this parcel of land belongs to Dominico's family. In Kiswahili, ningependa kuambia wanahabari ya kwamba siku ya leo tumekuja hapa kwa koti kuhakikisha ya kwamba watu wetu wa Embakasi East constituency pamoja na Kasarani constituency hawadhulumiwi. Juzi kulikuwa na uamuzi kutoka mahakama kwa hakimu ya kwamba shamba ilikuwa la Kirima na walipewa notice kutoka by 31st of December. Lakini ningependa kuhakikishia watu wetu ya kwamba mwenye shamba amejitokeza kutoka Italy, anaitwa Bernardo De Masi, ambaye ni mtoto wa Domenico De Masi. Na siku ya leo tumekuja hapa kotini kuhakikisha kwamba watu wetu hawezi tolewa na Domenico apewe shamba lake through Bernardo, apewe shamba lake, na hili shamba sio la familia ya Kirima jinsi ambavyo watu wanavyosema ama jinsi ambavyo koti ilivyosema. So siku ya leo tunahakikishia watu wetu wakule Krismasi njema pamoja na mwaka mpya, na mjue ya kwamba tuko hapa kama waheshimiwa wawili pamoja na hao wakili kuhakikisha kwamba tunawapigania na hii vita tutaishinda.
Issues of case and grabbing them after the past. Maybe a clarification from what.
Yes. So first of all, I confirm that the estate of Dominico was never involved in the suit. So one of the prayers we've sought from the court is for them to be enjoined because they were not aware of such a dispute. The second thing is that the estate of Dominico, represented by Bernardo, have never transferred or sold the land to the family of Kirima. As far as they know, they have done their succession, and it is very clear that even the estate, that is that particular property, has devolved to them. So this is actually the first application they are filing since they became aware of such a dispute from the fifth estate.
And lastly, what is the size of this land? Because there are two lands, 68, 25, 22, and 5908. I know 5908 was the bigger one.
Primarily the land was 1,000 acres. Yes. So the dispute is in regards to that.
Just to add on that,
I think it's very clear that the purported land by Kirima family, they either obtained the title by fraud, because the documents that you presented in court is questioning their ownership. How do they come owning the land yet? It's all known that the land belongs to one Domenico De Masi, and the land has since devolved to his descendant, represented by Bernardo. So those are the facts that we have presented in court, and we believe that we get justice, and that the family of Domenico, represented by Bernardo, will finally get to own their land, and they have an arrangement with the constituents of Babu, Honorable Karauri, that even as they get back their land, they will have a way of making sure that the residents get their reprieve and subsequently get their title.